minutes so that way we can kind of have 3 minutes of
Got it.
uh, yeah, 24 minutes, and then we'll kind of say 3 minutes of content.
Okay.
Yeah,
For
so
sure.
we'll just make that an ask,
Okay.
and we'll be good to go.
Okay. For
All
sure.
right.
Absolutely.
All right. So I'm kind of in.
Okay.
Get comfortable here. Make sure nobody's gonna run past me here in the house. Good day, everybody. Thank you again so very much for being part of Creative Juneteenth here for 2021 with us here at the Subsume Summit. Again, my name is Dedrin Sneed, founder of Subsume here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I have the pleasure of being joined by Jonathan Jennings. Jonathan is a developer of great note with Weird Kids Studios and a man of many talents. Absolutely somebody you want if you're back to the wall in a galactic bar. So we are here to talk about a quality title. I just want to make sure I read it because it's perfect. From my mama's house to the game industry. And so not only was I'm a fan of the work and the hustle it took to see where you're at and where you're about to go, but I think this title is something that so many of our folks will be able to really resonate with. So, without further ado, Jonathan, tell us about yourself and how do we get up out of our mama's house
Right.
into this big game, please.
Right. Yeah. So I'm Jonathan Jennings. I've been a software engineer and game designer in the industry for about 9 years altogether. It's been about 5 years of my career in the mobile game industry. So first year I worked at was called Sabretooth Interactive. I worked on a few games, Animal Planet Wildlands, Flavor Monsters, Thunderjack's Log Runner. And then second half of my career has been mostly in the VR AR space. So I've been working on a few titles. I worked on Ghostbusters VR Now Hiring. I worked at a company called Relay Cars where we did like a lot of automotive brand stuff for like AR and VR. And most recently, I just dropped my game Galactic Bar Fight on Oculus Quest. So yeah. And I think the whole title, growing up, right? Like I think for my life, the song that resonates the most is "Juicy" from the Notorious B.I.G. Right? I love the song so much because Biggie talks about reading these magazines and like thinking you can almost see him like dreaming. One day I'm going to talk to Salt and Pepper. One day I'm going to talk to Heavy D. Right? And so me growing up, like my idols in games were like Shigeru Miyamoto, who made Mario, Star Fox, Zelda. Hideo Kojima, who made Metal Gear Solid, Tim Schafer, who created Psychonauts, and all that stuff, right? And so, and I grew up watching G4, and so I always wanted to go to E3, right? That was my big thing.
Absolutely.
And so then got into college, I studied, and I got a chance to go to my first E3, which was wild, like all these game posters and just game stuff everywhere. It was loud and noisy, and I was so excited to be there. Second E3, I think I met Tim Schafer, which was huge. Yeah, there we go, straight off the page. I met Adam Sessler at my first E3, which he was one of the hosts for G4. I got a chance to sit in on a chat, like a fireside chat they did with Hideo Kojima. That was amazing. And then every time people mention Shigeru Miyamoto stories, the story's more about like you see a bunch of people and you kind of assume Miyamoto's in the middle of those people because, the guy who made Mario and is like basically the father of the game industry can't really move around by himself in those spaces, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I guess all of that is to say, like, I was a kid in my mama's house. I grew up playing too many games. They tell me, boy, go outside. You're sitting for that game all day. You need to go ride your bike or something. And I would go out and I'd run around for 30 minutes or whatever and come right back in, and they wouldn't say anything to me because I did what they asked me to. And go right back. Little did they know, right? And go right back to my games. And yeah, so yeah, for me, it's been an amazing journey, right? Like I never could have imagined I could make video games. I didn't think I was smart enough. Black people didn't do that, so I wasn't really sure that I had the capabilities or the support or any of that. But here I am. So we can. If I can do it, you can do it, right? That's kind of how I feel.
No, absolutely, and I think that's exactly part of what the message and opportunity of doing something like Subsume, at least from my purviews of the game industry, is very much spot on, right? It's the idea of being adjacent and involved in real sense in all this game culture and wanting to make and wanting to be part of it, but not seeing yourself, and to your point, not seeing anybody that really could show or share the way to do it. But kind of where we are now is we have so many of these tools available, but a lot of times we still have that opportunity where we don't see enough of us, particularly for creators of color. We just don't see it. Right. So what was that turning point for you to say, okay, you've got the passion, you really know that if you put your mind to it, you can do it. Right. What was like a real key step to then saying how you could make that next point of progress?
Right. So I think there were 2 points, right? The first one was I was playing Fable, which is an old game on the Xbox, right? Mm-hmm. And I think I like to say that was the birth of my game developer brain, right? Because I was playing Fable, and it's rumored it's going to be this big, crazy Skyrim before Skyrim happened game, and it came out, and I thought it was a great game, but it wasn't what it was sold as, right? And so I spent a lot of time like really kind of obsessing about everything about this game, from the music to like scars showed up on your character to like the boss fights, like picking up your experience points in the world. Mm-hmm. Like I really like fixated on all aspects of this game. And it was I don't think I've ever really analyzed the game that deeply up until that point. And I think that was like the first time my game developer brain came out and kind of started to like see the pieces, I guess, of the game, right? And really appreciate that there's different components that make this complete experience. And then the second part was I was in high school, and DeVry University was really popular at the time. They were starting to come together with their game simulation programming course. Mm-hmm. And an ad popped up on my TV, and I was like, "Oh, you can make games for a living? That's interesting." But still didn't do anything really about it until they had like a recruiter show up at my high school, and he showed us this basically it was Pong, but Homer was the paddles, and like the donut was the ball, and so but he came to school and showed us this game that one of their students made, and I was like, I think I want to do that. And so, of course, ran home, talked to my mama. My mama was always really supportive. And she told me, after I graduated high school, my 2 options were I was either going to go get a job or I was going to go study something. And so I was like, Mama, I think I want to study this, right? And she was right there with me. She was supportive. She was like, okay, well, let's figure out what that means. So we started to schedule getting a tour at DeVry, right? And then we sat down with their counselor. And they liked my grades, so they gave me a free class during my senior year. So I got to do a free programming class on the weekends just to see how I liked it. And I was interested, right? And from there, I enrolled into college, and I studied game programming for about 3.5 years. And that led to my job in the industry.
Dude, that's great. And again, it's good to hear that you had that support from your mother, and again, being able to see that vision, because a lot of times, right, parents can see, maybe not have all the information, or maybe not all the vision of gaming being a job, right? Being a career, and having not just a traditional esports idea that a lot of people now associate with how you may make a living in it. But as a developer, using intelligence, using software, using those parts, likewise, I mean, that there's so many purviews to gaming. But again, a lot of people are like, that rots your brain, right? No, that's a fad. It's not going to last. But again, glad to hear that you had parents. I had a parent that was part of that support system. So good. So at that point, mama's got your back, and now you've got a way to get that education. Right. What were some of the systems, or what were some of the processes that you learned just as in your initial phase of becoming a game developer?
Right. So I think the for the most part, the first year was actually kind of weird because it was basically like it was almost like an introduction to games, which um, of course I love talking about games all day, but also I was paying for classes that were teaching me what Metal Gear Solid was, and it's like I could write you a paper on Metal Gear Solid, right? Like that.
You could write that book back, right?
Right.
Exactly.
So the first year is more like intro to like what video games are, the different genres, all that stuff, right? Second year is where we started to get more into like actual game development tools. So we started to like do 3D modeling, so 3D Studio Max. We started to play with like Unreal Engine. We started to like make basic maps, like FPS maps and stuff. And that was like, it was Unreal Engine 3 at the time, so it was pretty rough around the edges. And then they introduced us to like Game Maker Studio to make like simple 2D games, like with drag and drop tools. And we also like, I think that second year is when we started to go over artificial intelligence, which is definitely like an area of passion. I'm not like super great, and I'm like working on that. And even in Galactic Bar Fight, that was one of the big challenges. Yeah, we started to like learn how to create basic. They're called finite state machines, and basically it's like if you just think about the guards in Metal Gear Solid, right? They can be alert, they can be calm doing their normal patrols. They can be like, oh, whose footprints are these, right? And like, and it's like having a system that can analyze, like, something's weird here. I need to change my behaviors. So that's kind of, we did that. Third year is when we started to get like into the physics programming. Started to have like more elaborate like game prototypes we'd have to create in class. And then my senior year, we had a senior project. So that was like our capstone. We had like, I think it was 3 months to put together a project. We had create like brochures and imagery. And I know my team printed out like CDs because I'm old. But it was a blast, and we got a chance to do a presentation from our families and basically like pitch our game. And so yeah, that was it was cool. It was cool, right? Like it was, I guess technically that's the first game I made and like got to share with people. So that was dope.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. So now that you've made that step out, more and more contemporary ways, you've been able to kind of make that way into other game development studios before you got to Galactic Bar Fight. Right. So now how did you find the marketplace of getting into another game to your first few game studios?
Right. So that's always the big question, right? They call it breaking in the game industry, right? And so the most important advice my professor gave me in college, and I really think the advice that got me to this point, he would said in college, if you only do the stuff we do in class, you're never going to get a job in the game industry. And he said that a lot, like, and he said so much that like it was one of those things, like, you know how old people sometimes they give you advice and like they're trying to help you out, but like it just falls on deaf ears because you know exactly what they're going to say and they've been saying it forever. And so I think for a lot of my class, it didn't catch, like it didn't take. But for me, like that was, that's all I wanted, right? To be honest, I didn't care to be a programmer. That's not why I was here. I wanted to make games. And I was like, well, if I had to make games in order to make games, then I guess I'm going to make games. And so, so I started to make like lots of small side projects, right? And started to play with Game Maker Studio. I made my first like original game where it was like it was called 30 Day RPG, and it was like basically a black text console, old school, like I don't even know, like pre-graphics games, right? And you basically go through, do like a little choose your own adventure. I made a game called The Amazing Sketchbook with like a stick figure running up and down a piece of paper. And so it's making like a lot of these small prototypes and starting to put together what they call a portfolio. And so your portfolio is exactly where, like, that's where you showcase all the games you've worked on, professionally and unprofessionally. I could talk about like how I made structures, how I designed the systems, what my thoughts were for this map I made, how I got this character animation to work, all that stuff, right? And so creating that portfolio is what got me the interviews, like even more so than the degree. I think we put a lot of importance on the degree, but especially in games, like the degree, everybody can have a piece of paper, but your portfolio is what shows you can actually make a game. And so put a bunch of like really small, poorly built, half-made games on my portfolio. And even having just that, recruiters started reaching out, and then studios started reaching out. And I had to send a bunch of resumes. I sent about 300 resumes between my junior year of college, and then my first game job. So I wanted it, right?
Right, you're on it.
Yeah, so I sent out 300, and then I had like 10 interviews, and I failed those 10. It was like 5 on phone call, 5 entering the studio, and then my 11th one at Sabretooth Interactive. That was the one. And so, yeah, every interview I'd go in there, I'd show my portfolio. Being a Black software engineer, that people, it was interesting because they weren't ready to see me when I showed up a lot of the time. And so, I told my girlfriend at the time I felt like a Black unicorn because either I'd have people, one side they'd be like, I know you don't program because that's not what you people do, so why are you here, right? That's the vibe I got. But then there was the other side, which was like, oh my God, a Black programmer, right? And so it was so weird because I felt like my reactions were either like real antagonistic or like extremely supportive, but they didn't really know what to do, right? I was super happy when I got hired at that studio and got a chance to work on my first few games. But yeah, that was kind of what happened between like that first job and graduating.
And I think you're saying something that's really important, and at least for the students that I've had a chance to teach, and you really 2 points. One, obviously, education is a key, and degrees do matter, right? We want to make sure that that for formal education it has its point. Right. But you said it right. Once you move across that stage, it's a piece of paper, right? It's you were here, you were present, and we've covered these subjects. Now the rest is on you, especially in the gaming industry. But I think you gave a great point of being actionable, right? You have to have physical representations, or at least the digital representations of the work that you've done, right? So I think that's a good key. And then the second part is, it wasn't magic, right? You didn't just walk out and get that next job, the job you wanted, or the first thing you applied to the next day. Right. And when we talk with kids and college students at Zoom, we try to go over that. It's the idea of you may have to work another job while you pursue your passion, right? So it's just that reality. But to your point, if it's something that you want, that's part of that process is actionably changing, kind of chasing where you want to be, where you want to go. That is, yeah,
absolutely.
Good. So now we look to contemporary times where you've made it into Sabretooth. And what games did you work on there?
So that's where I worked on Animal Planet. I worked on Flavor Monsters, which is probably the most successful game I worked on. It had 1 million downloads altogether. So that was great. I was, especially at the time, that was about 2013, 2014-ish. So, and then what else did we work on? We worked on a few bad ones too. So I don't know if I want to share those, but I think we worked on like a Snow White and the Huntsman. When that movie came out, there's like a promotional game. We did that. There was, I think it was pretty intense. We worked on like 6 games in 9 months, which, like, if you do the math, that's just not, like, that doesn't make sense. Right. So we worked a lot, but it was a lot of experience, and I think it set me up for my next gigs. So those were all the games I worked on at Sabretooth.
Nice. So now moving to more contemporary times, right? So now we have Oculus, right? And so now we're moving into the next foray of virtual reality and things of augmented reality, VR, AR. At this point, what was your first context of dealing with Oculus, or dealing with that from a programming or even from a user standpoint?
Right. So I think I've been working in mobile games for about 5 years, and so I had a pretty good run. Right, I was at quite a few studios. I got a chance to work with Ember Lab. They're coming out Kena Bridge of Spirits for the PS5. And that's the founders are 2 Black brothers, so definitely keep an eye out for that. And then after that, I had a few more games. And around 2015, 2016 is when Kickstarter kind of blew up, and the DK1, which was like the first VR headset, was got a bunch of money, right? Got kickstarted heavily. And I think that kind of shocked everybody. And so it was around that time, like, I started to hear whispers about like VR jobs and stuff, but it wasn't games. So I wasn't like super into it. I think it was like 2016-ish when I was looking to leave the mobile game company I was at, and a friend of mine was asking me if I was interested in a contract role at like a small studio called Fisherman Labs I worked at. And at Fisherman Labs, they were working on a game for the Google Cardboard. So they brought me on. They didn't tell me anything about it until like they hired me, and they were like, "Oh yeah, so we're working on this Ghostbusters game." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I know Ghostbusters, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of cool." And so. Got a chance to work on Ghostbusters now hiring for the Google Cardboard. That was really cool. I think my favorite part about that, one of like the highlights of my career, I got to build the proton gun. Like they gave me like a lot of creative freedom. So I was sitting there watching video clips of all the movies. Like, how does this like line move? What colors are the rays for the proton gun? I had a blast. But so that was my first VR game working on Ghostbusters for the Google Cardboard. I did like a lot of core gameplay programming and all that. And then from there, I got hired to that company, Relay Cars. But yeah, Ghostbusters was my first VR project.
Awesome. So now you able to build one for someone else. What's the transition to now as a game developers kind of come now to say, what can I build for myself?
Right. Let me think. I think the first time I actually built for myself wasn't even really for myself, but at work we've been working with the Magic Leap, and I don't know if you know, like it's a wearable augmented reality glasses headset, and I thought it was just crazy that this thing can scan my room and have portals open up in my walls and have robots fly out. Like I thought that was the wildest thing.
Yes.
And so I was playing like games on it, and I was like, I kind of want to play around with this at my place, right? And so I bought a Magic Leap, and then and they were real expensive. So I was like, well, I gotta build something for this, right? And and then I was thinking about my niece and how I'd love to show her the headset because she was about nine at the time. But they don't really have content for little kids for those headsets, and we don't really know how they affect younger kids right now. And I think they're still collecting data on that. But I wanted to make her something, so I made this little experience. I called it Snack Attack. There we go. And so you basically spawn this teddy bear in like the middle of your living room or wherever you are. Like the headset scans your area. You spawn this character in the middle of your room, and then using the control stick that comes with the headset, you can steer this bear around your area. And so I have a video of it like on my portfolio site. Like there's a visual, like I'm walking the bear up and down my like car garage area. But yeah, my niece. So I made this experience, and on the 4th of July, I wanted to show it to her. So made this little experience, took over to her house, and I was like, I have something to show you. Pulled out the headset. It took a second for us to figure out like what she was seeing, making sure she saw the right stuff. But I think one of my favorite moments was like watching her take the controller and then walk this bear up and down her hallway at home. And just, I don't know, that was special to me. Right. And so I guess the first time I made anything for myself was more like I wanted to make something for my family. Right. I wanted to make something for her. And so that kind of stoked my desire to like start creating for myself. And I think, that's kind of what led to Galactic Bar Fight.
So now that you're right at the precipice, right? Where now you've got the experience and now you've seen like how this technology is actually going to change, the way that digitally, we're looking at digital entertainment and media.
Right.
So now we've got Galactic Bar Fight. Right. So tell us, for those, at this point who may not know about what that game is, how would you describe your game Galactic Bar Fight on Oculus?
Yeah, right. So it's an arcadey action game, right? Definitely inspired by Halo, but even more so, I think it's inspired by like the games I grew up. Like I love simple games, right? Like really basic score attack games. I think they're kind of cathartic. I like games that are like controlled madness. I like when it feels like a lot of mess is happening, but you're actually in control of everything that's happening around you. And so Galactic Bar Fight is definitely me kind of trying to incorporate that older game style of like a simple score attack, but also trying to incorporate it with the cool things about VR, which are like the immersiveness, the interactiveness, right? Being able to take the weapons and use them whatever creative ways you can imagine. And so, it's like a timed like survival round, basically, of where you fight in a galactic bar.
So how long did it take you to make this game?
It's been it's been a while. It's been about a year and a half, and it's been that's really slow. Like if I look back, because I've been rebuilding a lot of stuff, and like in the past 3 months, I probably rebuilt half the game, like compared to how long it's taken me to get to that point. But it was a lot of learning too. Like I didn't know what Galactic Barfight was going to be at the beginning. I wasn't sure on what the vibe I was going for. I didn't know what the full concept was. So it took me a second to figure out what the game was, and then like, okay, how do I get artificial intelligence working in the Oculus headset? Okay, let's figure that out. That's kind of a big problem. Okay, how am I going to get these guns to work in VR? Okay, let's play with that, figure that out. And so it's a lot of like experimenting with that stuff to get to where it is now. Yeah.
No, that's great. Now, there was part of this, and before we get to the idea of how, I guess, it came along from there. In your development, in the development diary that you had was shared on LinkedIn, you talked about there was one bug that seemed to like be haunting you, that was haunting you during your development. Yeah. Now, that's something that I think anybody that's any coding or programming, can relate to. Kind of just a quick synopsis. How was that, and resolving that to obviously get to a point of delivery? How did that go about?
Right. So the big issue was I think this is like a universal game developer problem, but like I started too big, right? Like I wanted to make this really robust AI system, and like I wanted to have this like character. I imagined this character, right, that would walk up to the bar, order a drink, be able to go walk over to its friends, talk or whatever, and then you start shooting it, and it drops the drink, pulls out its gun, starts blasting you, right? I wanted to do something really big and elaborate and kind of seamless like that. And then I realized that is a lot. That is a lot of stuff. That's a lot of things switching. That's a lot of awareness. That's a lot of, okay, what is holding a drink? What is pulling out your gun? What is going over to the bar? What is the timing of that? Like like figuring out all the different like pieces that went into that. And so I tried to make this big system, and I tried to explain to my friends what I was making, and they got confused when I was telling them about it, and then I got confused explaining it. And that's how I think you're thinking too big. If you're explaining your idea and you get confused by it, then you're doing too much. That's just a simple rule of thumb I think I'd take. And so I just had to go back and like simplify. What do I need, right? And I needed an AI that can spawn. I needed an AI that can spawn and knew where the player was. I needed an AI that can spawn, knew where the player was, and might occasionally duck or shoot. That's what I needed, right? And so I went back, boiled down the AI to like those simple behaviors, and then got that working. And there was also like another part that was like it had to do with like the AI tool I was using to build it. It just wasn't working on the Oculus, so I had to go back, rebuild this whole system with a simpler implementation across the board. But that's what worked, right? Like I simplified everything, boiled it down to the simplest components I could, and that's what I shipped with. And yeah, I think that's just problem solving, I guess.
Right. So now you're half in. You got your game. Right. So how did you connect your first game, at least from a main developer standpoint? Right. How did you get connected with Oculus and Facebook as far as taking your game into that next step?
Right. So I started working on Galactic Barfight before. So I was in this program called Oculus Launchpad. And Launchpad is basically like an incubator for like minority developers who are interested in making VR content, and it's a chance to win a grant. So I applied for this program, and I was going in to like work on Galactic Barfight. I felt like that would give me the motivation to finish it, all that. And then I started working on this VR hip hop game, and unfortunately Galactic Barfight kind of fell to the side. And then we got towards the end of that project, towards the end of the program, and we had a month left. And I was like, oh man, let me wrap up Galactic Barfight. And so that kind of played into like me finishing it. Yeah, I think I just had to apply for the Launchpad program, right? Like my friends had told me for years I should apply to it, and I just never had a project I was working on. And then it kind of was perfect. I was working on Galactic Barfight. I needed like a little extra push to make sure I finished it. And that just tied in perfectly. Yeah.
That's awesome. So now, we're seeing that, Facebook had a chance to and Oculus, which owns Facebook, had a chance to highlight your your journey as a developer, particularly as a Black developer, in gaming, and now we're seeing like it's a very popular game on Oculus. How does that look now in reflection of maybe where you took it from concept to now having a lot more interest in a first run game?
Right. I would have been, if you would have told me 100 people would have played it when I was first programming it, I would have been over the moon, right? Like I would have been so ecstatic that anybody cared. And so I made it, and just last week it passed 7,000 downloads and 5,000 players altogether. And like that, like my friend, he put it into terms. He's like that. If you think about it, like that's a line outside of a convention, right? Like that's a people, right? That's not a small number, right? And so it's amazing, right? Like I think the game's a little bit rough around the edges, and I'm working on improving it. And I'm like enjoying seeing all the feedback. I'm seeing people record videos of it and giving their impressions. I saw like random Reddit posts about it. I'm seeing like random like pirating portals with the game on them or whatever. Yes. And it's just kind of it's crazy to think I made something that people care about, right? Like it's just on that simple level, right? It's special on that level, right? Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Again, as we alluded to earlier, to get from the idea of do we as Black people do this to the point of, like you say, where now you've got something that's wildly popular on the platform. Now looking back at that journey, what's next, right?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? Well, the first thing I want to do is like I want to improve Galactic Bar Fight. So when I made it, and because I was wrapping up for that program, I think there were parts of it that I didn't flesh out as much as I wanted to. So definitely like the weapons are a little bit samey. I'm not a big fan of that. Right. So the first thing I wanted to do is just like rewrite the whole weapon system, and I'm really happy with how that looks. There's a lot more variety. I have machine guns, shotguns, different kind of pistols. I have like some pretty hot particle effects. Like I think it's going to feel good to shoot these guns. So I'm excited to share that. I also started implementing like a hammer because like there's this scene in Lord of the Rings where Sauron's just like swinging his mace and these dudes are flying all over the place, right? And I was like, I kind of want to do that. Like I want to give somebody a hammer. I just want to see you well on this alien that's trying to fight you, and just I want to get you to hear him scream and fly off in the distance, right? Like just and because it's cartoon stuff, right? But I think it'd be a fun thing to play with. And so yeah, it's a lot of like reinventing the systems. I want to make sure there's more challenges and like achievement type stuff to do, like so that there's reasons for people to come back. And yeah, just kind of I want to make it a more fleshed out experience because people are, even if it's only a 5-minute experience and people are putting their time into it, I just want to make sure that the time they're putting into it is worthwhile. And so that's my goal, just to make the next version of Galactic Bar Fight more of the vision I originally wanted. And make it something that people don't just play just because I'm a Black game developer, but play because they legitimately enjoy the experience.
Well said. And to that, and as we want to look at, like you said, not just because you're a Black game developer, but we do need more to get to a certain point of finding ourselves included. And again, another great thing about you is that you've taken the opportunity of not having that example for your own work, of being able to look at many Black game developers, but now you're in a position that you're helping youth basically having the youth be able to see you as the example that you didn't have. So can you tell us about the work that you're doing with, what is that program and how does that impact?
Yeah. So I've been working with the Better Youth program for the past 2 months. And so they approached me because they're partnered with like Skydance Interactive. They just came out, which came out with the Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. And so they wanted to create a kind of game design cohort. And so they weren't completely sure what that looked like. And I had just gotten laid off from a job. And so I was looking for a new kind of work. And I've been interested in teaching quite a bit. And so we talked. Somebody recommended me to them, and we talked. And I loved their vision for the teaching program, and they kind of loved like my my approach to teaching. And so we just talked through that, and they gave me the job to kind of come up with a curriculum and be like a facilitator to figure out how to build this game design curriculum. And so there was like a weekly objective. They would give me like, with this week, we want to talk about art design, right? And then I'd go on YouTube, I'd figure out all the videos I wanted to look at for art design, new games, old games, just art design theory videos, right? And like use that as a kind of a platform so I could talk to my students and like also like get to know them and what games they love. Like what art do you guys love? What kind of game art like speaks to you, right? And so yeah, my whole job was basically to create that curriculum, kind of help them like figure out what they love about games already and like understand how stuff works behind the scenes. And over the course of the class, we made a small kart racing game, which I think we were all really proud of at the end. And you know, I think that my favorite part is being able to be that example, like, and talk about my experience, right, as a Black man in the industry. But also, I love, like, they're so smart, right? And I think that's what really matters to me. I want Black brilliance at any age. I just want to make sure that we really highlight that, right? Because I think if you're in the wrong environment and you don't appreciate, like, you might be brilliant and just in the wrong setting, right? Like maybe this just isn't the environment that can really help you to be the most brilliant person you can be. And so I think it's important that, you know, people like me kind of extend a hand and help people find that brilliance in themselves, especially the kids.
No, well said. And I think that just fits so much with the mission that we're looking at, of course, with Subsume to do the same thing, right? We want to see our youth be able to see themselves and within creative and tech careers, be able to know that they've got, not only they got a shot, but they have every opportunity, you know, ahead of them. Right. Now, kind of looking at it in some, you know, what are some of the programs for a developer, you know, with all of the purviews that you've had? What were some of the main programs or resources that you might have used to not only kind of get on board, but kind of stay in the loop with things in the industry? Yeah, for sure. I think, I mean, just as far as like news overall, right? There's a channel on YouTube called GDC, and so it's like the Game Developer Conference, and it's a bunch of talks from professional game devs who've worked on games you love. All right, the Uncharted, the Halos, the God of Wars, right, and also indie developers. So it's just a channel full of people talking about their approach to game development. And I think it's just a great channel to watch, to kind of sponge and suck up that information. There's also Gama Sutra, which is it's a website about the intimate knowledge of games. That name's a little bit funny, but they're working on it. Mm-hmm. But it's basically like a news website for the game industry in general. And then like as far as like tools, I think Unity, like I've, you know, all 9 years of my career, I've been a Unity engineer. And so that's been kind of crazy to work with one tool and see it evolve with it. And kind of that's been fascinating. And I've made so many things with Unity up to this point. And Game Maker Studio taught me a lot too, right? Like before Unity, Game Maker Studio was the engine I was most comfortable with. And so I always recommend if somebody just wants to play around with a game engine, I think Game Maker Studio is a great place to start. And then start to play with Unreal or Unity, whichever you prefer. I can't hear you. Mute. There you go. I was gonna say, very well said. But with that, kind of in some, we all understand that there's an opportunity for inclusion in tech. Right. What's your idea of how we actually resolve that?
I mean, I think the thing that upsets me the most is that there's this real aversion to going to the HBCUs, and I don't understand it. And I feel like if you talk about like the most young, brilliant Black minds in the country, you have to guess that a significant number of them come from the HBCUs. And so I think the tech industry has to stop being lazy, because I think it's laziness. I don't think it's actually I don't think it's an actual logistic problem. I don't think it's a problem like we just don't have the resources. I think they just don't care to go to the HBCUs and start talking with them on how to recruit and incorporate that talent into the tech industry. And so I just I think the tech industry, we need to put more pressure on them to make that effort, whatever the version is. I just don't understand it. It really bothers me. And then I think, definitely I've seen a lot of programs pop up that are focused on teaching STEM to kids. And so, going back to me, like I didn't know what programming was growing up, right? I didn't know what game design was. Oh, I didn't know what actually went to game design. And so I definitely pour myself into those volunteer opportunities, because if I'm the one game designer you meet in your life, right, then I think that it's something it would feel wrong for me not to take that opportunity to be that one game designer you meet in your life, right? And so yeah, I think we just have to make sure we're going out there and making sure that kids have the opportunities, that they're seeing Black faces that are successful in spaces they want to be in. And then we have to put pressure on the tech industry to stop being lazy, because I really do believe it's pure laziness or just straight up racistness, right? Because what else is it, right? It doesn't make sense to me that HBCUs have been there, so why is the tech industry there?
That's so true. I know that right now that there's more of an emphasis on it, but to your point, there's still an opportunity to really make where I guess is authentic connection or sustainable connection in that sense with a lot of it. I mean, we have programs and processes in place that are trying to bridge that gap. Right. But again, I think to your point, it's acknowledging that gap's not going to close in and of itself.
Right.
So no, I think that's perfect. All right. So I think the last question before we close out is, now that you're in the industry, what does your mom think about all this?
Man, mama couldn't be prouder, man. It's so wild. Even I post on Facebook quite a bit, and she'll mention, she'll randomly ask me, so how's your game doing? And I love it, right? And I told her I was going to make a weapon based around her. She told me actually I should make a character. And I'm playing with this idea. I'd love to have this Black revolutionary woman you could just call in who comes and saves you. I think that would be really dope. So definitely playing with that idea. But I'd love to have my mom featured in the game in some part, because I wouldn't be here without her, right? In so many ways.
That's amazing. I think that's completes full circle. To have your mom in the game.
Right.
That's pretty dope. I would say that's fantastic. So, Jonathan, where can we keep up with you and your work in your studio?
Yeah, for sure. Right. I just created a Twitter for Weird Kid Studios. So it's at WeirdKid12. And then you can follow me on Twitter. I make a lot of noise. I'm at JohnnyJ17. You can, I write a lot on Quora. So if you look up Jonathan Jennings on Quora, I think I'm I'm probably the top contributor, because I write entirely too much on that site. Just about my love for games, actual work I've done on games, all that. And then, of course, LinkedIn, right? Feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn. I'm definitely on there too much too.
No, that's what we need. We need your voice, we need your example, and we need your games, and we need your mama on that next one, right? So we got it. So thank you again. I'm really thankful for this connection and the opportunity to connect with you. Obviously, with us in Subsume, we got more to come. So with that, thank you so very much, and we'll take it from there. So with everyone, thank you all again for tuning in, and we'll continue on the show here with Creative Juneteenth for 2021 and Subsume.